Hey everyone, pleasure to see all of you here. Pleasure to be in TechChill. Pleasure to see so many familiar faces. I hope you're not too tired on the second day of the event, and I hope you still have a bit of energy in you. My name is Martins. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Toneboard. We are an organization that basically helps corporates, other organizations unlock the value in its audio data we help them achieve their business objectives. And in our travels, myself and my team, we have observed a few things about audio. Audio is obviously a bit of a sexy topic right now. People talk about it with Amazon Alexa, with Siri, with other things. But one thing I've observed is that for some reason, people find audio data a bit mysterious compared to other data types. When they talk about text, when they talk about images, they generally understand them quite well. But for some reason, audio seems a little bit more mysterious. And I think I've observed three problems. The first problem is people generally don't know what you can do with audio. The second problem is people make really big mistakes about collecting and storing audio that really limits the value of this data, hence the name of the presentation, Bleeding Data. And the third problem is that people don't know what the best organizations in the business, like Toneboard, can do with this data. So I'm going to solve all three problems today. Firstly, I'm going to tell you what you can do with audio. Secondly, I will actually identify the best practices, 6 best practices, not too much, on how to handle audio data. And thirdly, I will give you a bit of annoying self-promotion of Toneboard. I hope that's okay with you. So let's start with the first problem. So what exactly can you do with audio data? And I apologize if this first part will be a little bit academic, but I think it needs to be, because you need to really understand what you can do with audio. And the way I organize this is on 3 levels. Firstly, what can you actually extract from audio? Secondly, what kind of cool analytics you can do with audio? And thirdly, which could be most interesting for all of you, what kind of business value and business benefit you can get from audio. So the first level, that's super academic. You basically can do 2 things. The first thing, which sounds, yes, a bit too complicated, is paralinguistics, which basically, when someone talks, it's basically everything about the way people talk, which has nothing to do with the meaning and content of what they say. A really good way of thinking about this, I've noticed, imagine you're listening to a person speaking in a language you don't understand. You can still identify how quickly they talk, how loudly they talk, what kind of pitch level they have, what kind of pauses they have, and so on. You can actually extract thousands upon thousands of these features, which we do at Toneboard, and you're able to do all kinds of really cool analysis. The second thing you do is something we call semantics, or what people say, which is really the content of what people say. So imagine you're listening to someone in a language that you do understand. You can turn someone's speech into semantic meaning, and you can actually do cool things with text and concepts. So it's basically turning speech into text or speech into concepts. So one super important thing that you all should take away from this talk is that actually the second thing, speech into text, is not a simple problem, and in some languages it doesn't work very well. In a language like English or Chinese or Russian, you can turn my speech into text with really high accuracy. But in a smaller language like Latvian, Estonian, or even Swedish, you will actually get certain error rates. So whatever you want to do with this, just remember about the fact that actually that is a problem. Okay, this is the boring stuff. Let's go to something more interesting. What can you do with this? And the answer is, you can do shitloads. So you can do a lot of really cool analytics. The first thing is you can actually use someone's voice for verification identification. So you can think of voice as having a unique voice print. So basically, think of this as a fingerprint of your voice. So you can actually use someone's voice to identify them. And this works surprisingly well. Our own Toneboard technology is capable of taking recording of someone's speech and then comparing this person with the previous recording, and almost with 100% accuracy, we can tell whether it's the same person. So just think about the applications in, for example, security or customer service. Another cool thing you can do is keyword spotting. So if you've turned audio into text, you can identify keywords that you're interested in. Imagine someone's calling you and they're complaining about a specific product. You can immediately route them to the right path for your organization. Or imagine someone's complaining about, I don't know, a certain type of problem that they have. You can route them to the right specialist. So this is a really powerful technique with huge applications in customer service, compliance, and other things. The third thing, which I won't go into too much, is concept analytics or speech bots. It's basically being able to have a decent conversation with a machine. So something like Amazon Alexa, where you can actually turn text into concepts and have a normal conversation. You probably heard about the field natural language processing, but I think this will have a huge applications in business in the future. The last two things I want to talk about, because we're most excited about this at Toneboard, we're a bit of geeks if you haven't noticed, is behavioral analytics and predictive analytics. So behavioral analytics means that based on the way someone talks, you can actually understand loads about their behavior. So a very good example of this is, for example, people are calling you, and you can use things like, for example, unsupervised learning techniques to, for example, cluster people into typical customer profiles. So you have this one person that tends to behave in this way, or this one person that tends to behave in this way, and you can actually, for example, target them with certain ads, or you can do other cool stuff, which has huge applications in a lot of organizations. Or just the inverse thing is do anomaly spotting, where you actually have these clusters, and then you're able to identify things that seem a bit weird, which actually are quite good at fraud, in compliance, and other things. And actually, you don't only need to use audio data, because imagine if you combine audio data with other types of data, metadata you have available in your organization, like text data, transaction data, social media data, and so on. You can do really powerful stuff if you're smart enough. And predictive analytics, which is basically supervised learning, which means you can listen to the way someone talks, and you can actually predict their behavior in the future. Which you imagine, if you can build a model, which in many cases is possible, you can predict someone churning from your business. You can predict someone buying another part of your product. You can predict people who will be of higher account value. So you can do really valuable things with this. Okay, the least boring part of this slide is actually where you can apply this. And there are loads of applications. There's fraud and security, so you can identify fraudsters. Sales optimization, which I already mentioned, so you sell more. There's customer support. You can decrease handle times of customers. You can do health diagnostics, turns out, for predictive analytics. You're able to actually diagnose things like Parkinson's from someone's speech with almost like 99% accuracy. An interesting story, we once called a guy in Oxford who actually came up with this model of diagnosing Parkinson's from voice. And we're like, hey, we have this technical problem at Toneboard. Can you help us? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll consult you for like 1,000 euro an hour. So we're like, oh, yeah, no, thank you. I think we'll figure it out ourselves. So he didn't help us too much. And two things which I think will become more interesting in future is actually loan and insurance underwriting, when you're capable of using someone's voice to actually underwrite loans. We are already working with one of Europe's biggest lenders on a product like this. And you're actually being able to issue insurance policies for new risk categories where you don't have enough historical data, which I think is really cool. Okay, but enough about this academic stuff. What I really wanted to identify in this talk was 6 best practices for data, for audio data. So here they are, and I see these mistakes being made all the time. So first best practice is, well, this works. Okay, awesome. I generally see that organizations miss out on a lot of valuable opportunities to collect audio data. And that's because they haven't really done the audit and they haven't really identified the touch points where they're capable of collecting audio data from their customers, which can be a call center, which is the typical thing, many functions in your organizations, so sales, customer support, dealing with different problematic situations and so on. But it can also be done in an app. It can be also done in a game, if you're a gaming company. It can be done in a certain environment. If you imagine something like Amazon Alexa, it can be done by just talking with something just located somewhere. So there's loads of these opportunities. And currently what I see talking with executives is that executives simply miss out on a huge fraction of the opportunities where they can collect data. So, and that is a problem because you need a lot of data to be able to do all of these cool analytic things I just mentioned to you. Second thing, okay, this is big. If I would like you to remember one thing from this talk, it's this. Most of you, if you have a call center in your organization, you probably have talked with this call center and they're providing you their services. And you treat it as a cost center. You're like, okay, they're handling my business, I don't care. Most of you are currently recording audio in a mono format, which means one audio channel. You're not separating people into a stereo format, which are 2 separate audio channels. It's a bit technical, but it's huge. You need to switch to a stereo format right now, because you're missing out on a massive impact of your audio data. Even if right now you don't want to use audio for anything, you need to make the switch right now, because in a while, once you have a lot of data, you'll be able to use them for good purposes. So do that right now. And I guarantee that 90% of you are currently doing this in mono. That is a big mistake. There are some other things about the codec. So you don't want your audio to be too compressed. You want lossless compression. There's some things about sampling rates. So you probably want 16 kilohertz, things like that. But stereo is really huge. In machine learning, the general rule of thumb is garbage in, garbage out. So if you have crap data, you'll not be able to do all the cool things I mentioned before, and that sucks. What else? Okay, my technical co-founder gave me this complicated formula. Don't know what that means. He said it's Shannon's information theory, whatever that means. Thank you, Artus. But basically, there are a few things you can do to really enhance the audio analytic power, which is, first thing, the more standardized your conversations are with the same type of questions and same type of things people say, the bigger the value you can get out of your analytics. So if you have an unstructured conversation, you'll be able to do less. Another problem is that if you have very different languages in your data set, like Latvian and, say, Japanese, you'll be able to do a lot less than if you have similar languages, like Latvian and Lithuanian, or Spanish and Portuguese, or Spanish and French. So basically, the closer the languages are, the more you'll be able to do. Compression didn't take this out of this slide. I already talked about this in previous slide. Thank you, Artus. So, interesting thing. Many of you are thinking about
tools like Amazon Alexa, to be able to build speech bots and skills. Amazon Alexa and other of these platforms remove a huge part of the data that you could be using for your analytics. Because Amazon Alexa, remember the first slide when I talked about paralinguistic data and semantics. Amazon data doesn't give you the raw audio of what people say. Amazon Alexa only gives you the text. It turns audio into text, and it keeps all the cool data that you could be doing all the cool analytics with. So if your organization has created something, you're actually really with Amazon Alexa, you're really giving all the cool data to the Amazon, and you're really not getting it yourself. So it's a big risk. Jeff Bezos is a pretty smart guy, as you have noticed. So think about these things and be really careful about who owns this. And it's not just Amazon, because all the hardware, people who are using hardware for collecting audio, it's also people like BMW who are building things for their cars. They want to own this data because they are smart and they know this data is valuable. So think about this. Compliance probably won't go too much into this. You probably know things like EU GDPR is coming up. Be smart about this. Inform your customers that you're going to be collecting this data. Say to them what you're going to use this data for. Handle this data safely. Don't make big mistakes. Listen to what the regulators are saying, or you'll get fines. But it's also an opportunity, because if you're really compliant, I think it's a bit of a competitive moat compared to other organizations out there. And I think there are cool opportunities in regulation tech and compliance tech when it comes to audio. So think about this. And the final point, really, in our travels, myself and my team have seen how securely some of these call center partners are handling audio data. Things like encryption, things like who has access to data centers, things like that. And a lot of them are really, really atrocious. So you need to be smart about this, because people can get really big fines. So this is something you have to be really smart about. So just these 6 best practices is something that you really have to keep in mind. Okay, so that was the second thing I promised, right? So how not to make big mistakes? If you keep one thing from these 6 practices, is stereo, stereo, stereo. You're making this mistake right now as we speak. Don't make this mistake. Toneboard. We're a company, just went to Techstars London Accelerator, the best tech accelerator in Europe. Last year won in the Rietomo FinTech Challenge with our solutions. What do? We generally solve the problem of unlocking the value of audio data in your enterprise. And there are 3 main things we do. First thing is we stop you from making these mistakes that we talked about, linked with compliance, not recording data in the right format. So we do a sort of an audit, because we understand the analytics side really well, and we know the call centers don't understand really well. And we can generally provide the right solutions for you to store the audio in the right way, where you can actually do cool analytics things with it. We have a basic product, out-of-the-box product called Toneboard Match, which we can actually implement in your organization next week, which has to do with biometric identification, which means we can dramatically decrease fraud in your organization, and we can decrease customer handling times, which means you can really save cost in customer support. But the coolest thing that we do, these first 2 things really don't excite me, but the coolest thing we do is that we work with some of Europe's leading organizations, especially in financial services, even though we have a wider focus. We do workshops with their management where we really understand their vision and their data strategy, and we actually, together with them, come up with analytics solutions that can really generate business value in their organization, whether it has to do with sales, marketing, customer retention, loan underwriting, things like that. And we have very strong technical background. We have people with PhDs in physics, mathematics. We have Cambridge graduates, Oxford graduates. We have people with medals from World Mathematics, Physics, and Chemistry Olympiads. We are a very strong technical team. So if you want to talk to us, you really should reach out to me, or you should reach out to any one of my teammates. And we can actually set up a thing that we will do together. And we would love, like all the executives here, we would love to have a chat with you. And even if you're not an executive, our storage and our Toneboard match solutions are out there for you to be used. So I would love to do that. So let me make a 20-second summary. First thing, you might not be aware of this, but audio data is insanely powerful. You can do so much with it, and you can generate so much business value with it. Second, you're probably making mistakes right now with the way you collect and manage audio data. That's why I provided you the 6 best practices. And 3, Toneboard is amazing, and you should work with us if you get a chance. Thank you very much. We'll be happy I answer your questions.
Such a salesman, such a salesman. Good. We do have 2 minutes now for questions. Who has a first question? Just throw your hand up. Look, here is a question there. Where is our catch box? Just throw it there. Go, 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 go. Boom. Excellent. Shoot.
Hey, a quick question about mono versus stereo. Is it if it's a phone data, because most of that's mostly mono format
well,
originally?
Not necessarily. You can actually set up it really depends on the way your VoIP provider handles these things, and actually you can set it up in stereo as well.
Yeah, but I mean your voice, your microphone in a phone is basically mono.
No, what really matters is whether you and the call operator in the call center are recorded in 2 channels, because the reason analytics power decreases is because of a problem called dearization, which is the thing of separating 2 speakers in one audio recording. So the fact that you're talking with mono here is not a problem. What is a problem if we have one audio file where you are talking, and we are trying to use machine learning to actually separate you two, which is not a simple problem to do. It has an error rate, and that's the reason why the analytics power decreases.
Quick question regarding the compression, because you know that when we call over mobile networks, the speech is, there are certain frequencies which are cut off through the compression and these kind of things. How do you handle these? Or
I have to say that's probably a question better directed to my CTO. Probably won't be able to give you a very good answer, but I think all the organizations that realize that audio is so powerful need to think about ways how not to only rely on the legacy systems. Maybe if you're using call centers right now, people might be switching to apps in the future and not necessarily only relying on your legacy call center.
Let's take one more quick question from the audience with a quick answer. If nothing, then give him a big... Oh, yes, there was... Wait. There was one question. Okay, we're going 1 minute over it, but let's do it.
Why is it so difficult to classify the languages which are spoken? You mentioned that if you have multiple languages in a data set, that's an issue, but why?
Okay, so there are 2 different problems. One is turning speech into text, as you mentioned, harder in smaller languages because you don't have a large enough training data set. It's basically a supervised learning problem. But the second thing is generally people speak differently in different cultures and different languages. So imagine you want to do predictive analytics. So you want to say, the person who speaks like this is more likely to buy my product, right? So if you have a larger diversity in your data set and you don't have enough of, say, this kind of, you could call convergence or something else, but basically it is a bigger problem. It's much easier. Imagine you take all the Spanish speakers in the world, it's probably going to be easy. But then again, if you take like Spanish people in like Spain and Mexico, it's already a bit harder problem. So it very much has to do with the mechanics of machine learning. then it has to do with something else.
Okay, thank you so much. Give him a big applause. This was very interesting.
Thanks.
Thank you.